Welcome back to Whitt Acres. Today we're going to have the first official garden tour of the 2023 season. If you're new here, this video should get you all caught up on what's going on here in the gardens at Whitt Acres. I have 7 or 8 garden sections that I manage, and I'm working on filling up with a bunch of perennials to give me 4-season interest as well as annuals during the growing season. I'm in Western Pennsylvania, Zone 6A. This is Echo Pup, and we're going to be taking you on a tour today. We're going to start out here in the front garden, mainly because I want to get it out of the way before any of my neighbors get home and see me talking to myself. So out here at the front garden, I have a Royal Empress tree, a Palamonian tomatosa, that I planted by seed probably, I think, 4 years ago. This will be its 5th growing season, and it's just gotten massive. That trunk at the bottom is over 1 foot in diameter at this time. And it's just amazing how big this tree has been getting. And I grew it from a seed that was about the size of a flake of pepper. We have a beautiful set of hyacinths blooming over here. I don't actually ever remember seeing this bloom like this before. I thought these were all grape hyacinths and they were smaller. This is actually one of the best shows I've seen out of them. We just have a nice little patch down here and I like it. So we also have this light purple hyacinth that's blooming a lot of places around the property. I've spread it out a good bit, so I've been trying to get it established in a lot of different areas. So whenever they're blooming everywhere. That's what I try and do with a lot of the perennials. Whenever I have one, I try and spread it out all over the property so I can see it in every direction whenever it's blooming. Coming down the line, I did get some of this wood chipped early on whenever the daffodils and the hyacinths started blooming, just to give them a decent backdrop, but I do have to come in here and finish off all the mulching for this front garden. But you can see a lot of these light purple hyacinths that are blooming nicely, giving a good show coming up into the farm stand. So this line of purple hyacinths actually have some pink hyacinths and yellow daffodils in before these ones come up. So they've actually been looking good out here for a couple weeks now. The farm stand looks really nice out here. I haven't been doing too much business with it, but I don't really live on a busy road. We're on a dead-end road and I don't have a sign out yet to actually advertise for it. And mainly it's just here to look nice. We have the variegated hostas at the bottom of the mailbox looking good, and the purple clematis is actually growing up really nice up the trellis. So it's already at the top. I've been weaving it through, trying to get it to attach, and it should be putting off some buds here and blooming real soon. We've been having some nice warm weather, and if we get a couple more rains, I think a lot of stuff's going to be taking off. On the other side of the mailbox, we have the creeping phlox coming up, which I really like, and hopefully this will actually do really well and take over this area. I did plug in a chameleon vine, and you can see it coming back, or this chameleon ground cover, and it's actually doing really well in taking over this spot. I like how the spring comes up and gives me the shape of the perennials and the color of the phlox, and then during the summer the chameleon vine will completely cover the ground here. We have a sassafras tree that volunteered right here, and I really want to dig this up and move it around the property. I really do love finding volunteers and moving them where I want them. It's just free plants, and can't get mad about that. Speaking of volunteers, this purple flower here is something that I did not plant, but it is looking beautiful, so I'm leaving it. I'm not sure if I should let it go to seed out here. I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't know what it is. It's not prickly. It has a nice serrated leaf and beautiful clusters of flowers. I'll have to use my camera app and take a picture of that and see what it ends up being. A lot of the peonies around the property are starting to bud up as well. They're about waist high and getting very large. I have a few groups going through the back here. Getting to the yard side, the inside of the front garden here, we have a lot of yuccas, and I want to be transplanting some of these volunteer yuccas to clean up this corner. We have a dianthus right here that's gonna hopefully stay alive. The dogs kind of pee on this corner and it's really hurt my dianthus, but it seems like it's doing okay and spreading out. The main specimen of this area is the red azalea though. It is in full bloom, just gorgeous right now. We did have to protect it one night from the frost. Just right when the buds are starting to open, we had a really cold night come through, so I wanted to cover it up with a frost blanket just to ensure its bloom, because I really don't want to lose this blooming out here during the early spring. It's in a beautiful full bloom right now, and there's plenty more buds to open up on it as well. Whenever it's blooming, it is definitely the main focal point of the front garden. But the centerpiece is the hemlock. We have a beautiful hemlock here that is getting nice and mature and getting up there. I usually turn the weed whacker up on end and cut a nice edge going around the circle here, as well as all the other edges of the yard, and I think that gives it the nice clean look that it needs. A lot of this going around the bottom of the hemlock is annual burning bush that I grow, and I'm trying to keep the weeds back so that the annual burning bush can pop up through. It's a beautiful lime green during all summer, and then right as fall comes it lights up into a bright red and autumn's off beautifully. So I want to try and keep that coming back every year with the seed bank that I'm developing, and I just have to keep the weeds down a little bit while the burning bush grows up. Down around the corner here we have the hosta garden, or the north side of my house, where we have some decent amount of shade. I have the front lined up with some variegated hostas that are coming back beautifully this year. Right behind them we have the Empress Wu, which is the largest hosta you can get, and it is putting on size. We have a nice color back here with the yellow and the blue wrapping around, framing that. I have a tiny little bird bath right in here just for some little bit of interest, and I have some stones in there so the pollinators can grab something. This behind it is a fern I pulled out of the wood, so it's a nice native fern from my area. And then a couple more hostas. This is a filigree hosta, so it can't take too much sun with the white leaves, but it's really nice, just different interest. I really like the color it puts out here. Ton of these volunteer Rosa Sharons that keep falling off of the main specimen Rosa Sharon here. So I have way too many of these. They are just a weed, and they're a tough weed too because they're really woody and they have a tap root. They're not the easiest to pull out of the ground. I'll pop. On the other side of the path we have some more hostas, just a really big variegated one that I probably have to lift up and separate next year, and a couple more. I think they were blue mouse here. They have a little bit lighter blue coloring or a tinge to them. This one even has a darker variegation inside of it. So this is kind of my hosta grow out bed over here. I'm growing different varieties of hostas so they can get big. This is the north side of the house, so they kind of do pretty good over here, not getting scorched by the sun. So as they grow up, I'll just lift them out, separate them, put some of the pieces out in the rest of the landscape, and then I can put some back in and keep a nice full hosta garden over here, just supplying the rest of the property. To the left of that cover, I have the first rhododendron that's blooming on the property. This is the Holden rhododendron, a beautiful pink one with a white center and some freckles. It's going to only get about 4x4, so that one might end up getting moved. We have some bright light green hostas here that really bring some color to this darker north side of the house, and it brings the garden down to the rest of the corner here where I have another rhododendron. This is a purple passion rhododendron, and it is getting closer and closer to blooming here. Buds are swelling up, and I have some dead branches I need to cut off of that. Coming out this little tongue here is a big hosta on the end, and then we have two astilbe, one on each side. I forget what color they are. I think these ones are red, but they might be white. We'll have to wait and see, but they do okay there. They actually get a little bit too much sun, I think, and they might do better in another spot, but for now that's what this area is. I just need to get it mulched. I did have I believe a Tupelo sunflower here last year, so we have a couple volunteers popping up. So without the mulch you can't really see too much in this corner. We have the bird bath for winter interest, as well as two evergreens, a blue star juniper and a yellow arborvitae. We also have a viburnum, a blueberry muffins viburnum in the back there. I also have some blue jean baby Russian sages, a Sarah Smile yellow rose, some hydrangeas, and I really just don't know if they all survive the winter yet, so we're gonna have to wait and see a little bit longer on these. Got all the bird baths filled up today because it is a hot one. The eastern redbud just finished up its bloom cycle, so it's gonna be pushing out leaves here soon. We have the hydrangea row coming down the side here, and I believe all my hollies died. The deer came through and just ate them down to nothing, and I don't really see anything coming back on them. The hydrangeas are recovering really well from my prune, and the yard's looking really good edged. We have a lot of daylilies going down the back side, filling in a nice wall there, and hopefully at some point we'll get our fence back up here. But when the massive maple tree, the twin tree to this one, fell down, it took out part of the fence, and the rest of it was real old and rotten, so we took the rest of it down. We did get some more wood to put it up, we just haven't had the time to build it yet. My beautiful 8-foot oak tree that I planted here last year came back great and is looking nice and healthy. And so is my Cleveland pear tree, which bloomed nicely this year, and now it's covered in glossy green leaves. This area was an expansion that I did last year of the side garden. I brought it out to kind of frame this front garden a little bit more. We have a corkscrew willow on the corner, a bobo hydrangea here in the center. Over there's a butterfly bush. There's an iris behind that, as well as a liriope in the ground. We have a small grouping of salvia here that's putting on some buds. And then we have the blue Atlas cedar that I was actually worried about this year because it took a while for it to start putting on some new growth. But I see new growth all the way up to the top, and I'm really happy to know it's alive. I have a few phlox here in front of my Mount Laurel, which the deer also came through and ate everything, all the new growth, all the nice growth off of my Mount Laurel over the winter. But there is a few new leaves coming on here, so there's a little bit of life left in this, and hopefully it can regenerate and come back. I have rhododendrons around the property, but I really want the Mount Laurel. It's a nice cousin of the rhododendron that has a little bit different bloom. And this actually tried to bloom in the fall last year, so I know what it looks like, and I really want it in this spot if it can actually do well and the deer don't eat it. So now we're venturing out of the front garden and into the side garden. This is a perennial garden, I've been calling it, as well as the fairy garden. I really want to put a small landscape in here with gnomes and fairies and such, nice pathways, but I just haven't been able to find the time. So I'm trying to grow some perennials through here and just get them established, get them growing, so I'll be able to spread them out and put them where I want them whenever I get in here to do the whole area. Some of the perennials are the crocosmia that's coming up here in the front really strong. Behind that I have some groups of gladiolas, and then we also have some spider's wort coming up in small groups there. We have a daylily as well as some woodland phlox, some hellebores that have finished up their bloom and they're putting on their green leaves, some sedum for fall interest, which is really nice. It's a stone crop or sedum, and it has a different foliage than everything else and a really blue color to it, which makes it a nice addition everywhere. So we have a few of these around the property. Eventually this area will be backdropped with these thujas, which are growing nicely. I think they've been in about 3 years now, and they're about 5 feet tall to 3.5 feet tall, some of them. We have a bright red barberry here that this bee is trying to find some flowers on. Looks like it's just about starting to bloom. I have some more peonies in here and a massive hellebore right here. I actually tried to dig this out last year to separate it, and it was so well rooted that we just gave up. We have a Shasta daisy right behind it that's looking like it's spreading out nicely to where I might be able to split this up. This is a cherry tree actually in the center, but we're gonna have to take out. It's growing right out of my pyrus, and this pyrus looks like it's putting on its new growth, which is nice bright red leaves, so it gives it a nice coloring and a nice interest during the spring as it puts out its new growth. But I need to get this cherry out because it's really just choking this pyrus. Cherry isn't a bad tree, but it is a kind of dirty tree and a weak tree, so once it gets big it is prone to breaking, as well as its petals from it blooming kind of just get everywhere and make a mess. So it's really not the tree I want in this spot. Another small grouping of that light purple hyacinths that I like to try and just put everywhere. That's the one thing that's blooming right now, so there's always something that's blooming. So if I can put perennials everywhere, then when one thing's blooming, the whole property will be blooming. What, pup? There's something in that golden spirea. That is a pollinator magnet, but it's really not its time yet, so it just has some nice corn coloring on its leaves, but soon it will be covered in bees. We got all the bird bass filled up around the property. We have another barberry on this side, which is a darker maroon color, and it's putting on its buds right now to bloom. So I don't like to think of it as symmetry in this garden, but more of balance. So we have the barberries on either side of the two dead spruce trunks, but they're different colors, so they don't have to match perfectly. We have the stone crop on either side, as well as the hellebores or the Lenten roses. So I have kind of a balance going across here, but I don't want perfect symmetry. We also have the oriole feeder and the hummingbird feeders out. So I have been seeing the hummingbirds, but I haven't been seeing any orioles yet. So I'm hoping that I can attract some orioles to the property this year and maybe even get some pictures. Underneath the biggest maple on the property, we have another rhododendron that is about to start blooming. This one is a lot more mature, and it is probably closer to about 30 years old. It gets a lot of morning sun, so it is about to bloom, probably the earliest out of all the other large ones. And underneath that rhododendron, we have some variegated hostas with the white tips. I put these in here to kind of play with the Solomon seal variegated white tips that it has. And right now, it is blooming. So it has a nice little white blooms on it. So the side garden continues this way to the dwarf Alberta spruce on the corner. We have a dogwood behind it that is also blooming some white. So I have a lot of white over here. This is actually the first year for my dogwood to bloom, which I am so excited for this. I think I planted this 5 years ago, so this is the first time I'm actually seeing any blooms on it, which it's been a while. Underneath that we have the Shasta daisy, which will be blooming white. I just plugged in these hostas in a recent video, so we got a few of these in here that'll be purple, and that'll be later in the season, but we have some white and purple in here. The other white thing is this azalea. So we have a beautiful set of blooms coming off of this azalea right now, and it's tucked back here in the corner, so it brings a nice little pop of color to where you otherwise wouldn't even be looking. The yucca behind it also does white in the summer if it gets enough sunlight. We have the purple lilac behind that and a purple rhododendron right here. So along with the purple hostas, we have a nice show of white and purple going throughout the season back here. So the side garden continues around over here to the dwarf Alberta spruce. We have a few more white blooms as well. We have the dogwood that I planted 5 years ago, and it is putting on its very first blooms that I've been able to see. Gorgeous dogwood blooms. It is really nice to see that finally blooming, and with the white on that, it has a beautiful backdrop of the white azalea as well. This azalea is putting off a nice little show back here, bringing some light to an otherwise dark area. As the azalea finishes up, we'll have the rhododendrons start blooming back here, showing off their purple color, and hopefully that purple lilac will also start in the same amount of time frame, so we can have a continuation of blooms back here. That's right, Pop, we did add some hostas back here that'll add some purple color during the summer as well. So we started on the north side of the house with the front garden, went along the east side of the house on the side garden, and now we're going to head to the south side of the house, which has the majority of my plantings. We have the greenhouse back here, which I have kind of cleaned out with all my plants getting some nice sunlight today. But right next to it is the irises that are putting on some really tall buds, and a lot of them. So happy to see those. And right after those come, we'll have some daylilies. So we have a little bit of color here next to the greenhouse just to keep it alive during the summer. I also have a kaleidoscope buddleia down here on the corner, which I need to prune back. I got my other ones pruned back, but I forgot about this one. Next to the greenhouse along the wall, I have all my trays laying out, getting adjusted to the sunlight and the temperatures. I'm a little bit late this year getting some of the my plantings out, so I don't have many vegetables started down here in the vegetable garden, but we do have some perennials coming up, shaping up nicely from what we've been doing in the past couple years. You're invited straight into the pollinator ring, I call it. It has a butterfly bush in the center with the bird bath, and then coming around in a circle we have all of the purple hyacinths, which they are just in a beautiful bloom right now. Tucked inside the pollinator ring is also a bunch of lilies and gladiolas and other flowers that are going to be popping up, as well as the annuals that I add to bring all the pollinators into the garden. Around the side of the pathway here along the fence, we have some hostas plugged in just to add a little bit of shape, and because hostas are one of my main perennials that I want everywhere around the gardens, that whenever they bloom, everything blooms. At the end of the hostas, I'm planning on putting my herb gardens with some bathtubs, so that needs to get done, but I need soil for that as well. I'm also thinking of putting some seating on the outside of the garden to maybe enjoy the view a little bit. What do you think? Another purple thing that I love to see blooming is the chives. So it is coming into chives bloom, where I have one just sitting in this little ring here. I planted this out with a bunch of different herbs, and chives was the only thing to survive. So I just keep letting it go, and I enjoy the blooms every year. If you look past all the grassy weeds that are coming up through here, these are my garlic plants, and they're doing pretty well. They're standing up. I did have to plant this bed out before I topped it off this year, so it doesn't have all the nutrition in the soil that it should, but it's going to be doing okay anyway. It's almost like an in-ground garden. Uh-oh. Puppy's gone. I have a bunch of volunteer fennel popping up as well. I didn't get to top off this bed here, so it's kind of more like an in-ground bed with a good soil amendment from last year instead of a full raised bed. But I really needed to get my garlic in earlier than I was able to get the soil, so here we are. Once I harvest the garlic and the brassicas, I'll be able to top off this soil bed and maybe get a nice summer crop planted for a fall garden. This raised bed back here is the only one I did get topped off, and I filled it up with onions. So I have a bunch of onions that I started from started onion plants here. And then just yesterday or the day before, I sowed in a bunch of onions that I started from seed on this side, as well as a little German chamomile, and I have some chard coming back from last year's garden, as well as some Lacinato kale. This back bed is the asparagus bed, and you can see we have a lot of asparagus popping up, which is doing really well. We haven't been eating a lot of asparagus, mainly because we're kind of on a meat diet right now, but my dad has been coming down and enjoying some fresh tips. So we're getting a lot of asparagus popping up now that it's probably the 4th year in this bed. And I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna need a new asparagus spot. This asparagus is really filling out this bed fast, and I don't think that bed has enough space for it to live out its full 20, 40-year-old lifespan that an asparagus plant can live. So I might need a new or another patch of asparagus on the property somewhere. But like I said, there's still a lot of work to be done right now before the growing season really takes off for me. I have the vegetable row here that needs a little bit more cleanup before I can get it planted out. And then I still have to do a lot of amending to my pumpkin patch before I get my giant pumpkin planted in there. Out here I have another little patch of garden and a Royal Empress Paluonian Tomentosa tree, which this one is probably going to have to get cut down and re-sprout. This tree is really good at regrowing, so you can cut it down every year at the base and it'll send up a new shoot. And this is all 1 year growth right here that you're looking at. So that's all 1 year that it sprouted up and it got that big. So it won't hurt it to actually cut it back and give it a nice strong base to grow against. So I'll probably cut this one back down just so it's not an awkwardly shaped tree. And maybe once it grows back up again this year, I'll have a more uniform shape. Underneath the Empress, we have some purple hyacinths obviously popping off here because it is their time. And then we have a beautiful white iris. This is the second iris to open on the property, and it's a gorgeous white color. I think that might actually be my only white iris that I have. I just want a lot of color and interest to always be popping off around the base of this tree. So we have some daffodils, some hyacinths for some early interest. We have the purple hyacinths coming up a little bit after the other ones. And then we have the white irises popping up, as well as we have peonies and lilies and some daylilies as well, just to have multiple weeks of color down here, as well as a hosta plugged in here that keeps getting taken over by the ground cover that I dug it up with. Sometimes my friends are giving away free plants and I'll go dig them up, and sometimes whenever I dig them up and bring them back, they come back with more than what I wanted. So this one was one of them where I had some ground cover in the root base that it came home with, and that ground cover has been taken off and just very vigorous. So the hosta is real small here, getting just taken over by all this ground cover. I'm not sure what it is. If you know, let me know, and let me know if it's something I need to try and control or if it's any type of beneficial plant. So you got to watch whenever you're bringing home free stuff, what else you might be coming home with. On the left side here, I call it the squash mound. That's where I grow most of my squash and pumpkins. I did plant some irises here with my tree line, and we have the yellow honey locust right here that's coming back beautifully. Planted this last year, so it's really good to see that it is alive all the way up to the top. I love the spring color on this tree. Right next to it, we have another iris and an autumn blaze red maple that got eaten by the deer, and it's regenerating. I tried to dig it out, broke my shovel, so that's why it's still here. But I do have the replacement autumn blaze red maple right beside it doing really well. So this is the one that's gonna stay, and I'm gonna try and dig that one out whenever I get the chance. This iris that we put in here in a recent video is actually budding up, so that's nice to see. I'll still get some color out of it, transplanting it late. Right past that, we have the swamp oak, and it is just putting on some growth this year. It's going to be really nice to see this thing fill out. What is that? Looks like I have a bagworm stuck on the oak tree I'm going to have to pull off. Usually get those on the evergreens. That's weird to see it on the oak tree. Without going out there too far, this is the south garden that I'm kind of working on, just trying to get some framing out in it, some shade trees, some evergreens to start before I really come out here and do anything with color. So we have 10 maple trees that we planted out here last year, and one of them did die, so we'll have to replace that one. Hopefully we can get that done this spring. But 1 out of 10, that's not a bad ratio. So I have a lot of plans for the whole property, but my time and my resources only go so far. So I'm getting as much done as I can, and that's just gonna take a little bit longer to fill out. Bordering the vegetable garden, we have the raised bed we just put in last year. I put in a bunch of sun-loving plants in it, obviously because it gets a lot of sun. It's facing the south here and has nothing to obstruct the sunlight. So we have some Shasta daisy in here, some echinacea, some irises, some calla lilies, and I usually try and put my sunflowers and my gladiolas out here as well. Last year I just put in a bunch of sun-loving plants, but this year I want to put in more cut flower plants that enjoy the sun, so I can come out here and make some arrangements. I don't like cutting out of the flowers from my landscape because I put that plant there to bloom in its spot. So I'm trying to get a spot where I can fill up with a bunch of colorful plants that I can actually cut, and I won't feel bad about taking away from the rest of the landscape. On the corner is a rising sun redbud, which I think will look really nice once it's grown up, but it's still really young, and it got beat up by the late frost we had as well. So it's gonna take a little bit of time for that one to fill out its space and get established. Down below here we have a hibiscus that's gonna be starting up here late. We have, I believe, delphiniums, 2 of them right there. And then I plugged in another one, I believe, right there. Or that could be something else because the leaf doesn't look anything like those that I'm looking at right now. So when I did a lot of my sowing of seeds this year, my labeling was not up to par. So that doesn't look like a delphinium, but I'm just gonna leave it there and see what it ends up doing, because it's still a plant that I decided to grow from seed. So I'm sure it's gonna look nice. All right, so we covered the north side of the house, we covered the east side of the house, and what's going on in the south. We're gonna head to the center, what I call the island garden. So the island garden out here is surrounded by grass on all sides. So that is why I call it the island garden, not because of an island theme. It is actually heavily packed with perennials, so it can be blooming all year long without any effort from me. All I have to do is come in and mulch. I don't typically put a lot of annuals in here, so the perennials really have to carry the weight for this garden. So if you've been following me, you know this island garden. We've seen this angle before with the white giraffe and having all the daffodils and the hyacinths blooming. We also have some purple hyacinths over here that are blooming, giving the giraffe a little bit of company. Just looking gorgeous. Right in front of those hyacinths is some bee balm that keeps coming back. I'm glad that's the only Monarda that I was able to have come back. So it's good to see that one again after the winter. We have peony sticking out here, putting on some buds so it can have some color after these daffodils have been finished. Right beside that, we have a hosta that's getting covered up by some of these daffodils. So once the peony is very large, is going to be shortly behind that. Right past the stately dwarf Alberta spruce, we have a large burning bush, which is planted tightly with an eastern hemlock and another very mature rhododendron. Underneath the rhododendron, I plugged in some bright colored hostas to try and bring some lightness to this area, because it is the north side of this evergreen, so it kind of gives a dim lit during the most of the day. Behind Puppy, we have the heucheras, these red heucheras, which add a nice color pop to the area as well. And behind them, we have a darker purple, which is not doing as well as these lighter red ones for some reason. Maybe they're not getting as much sun or something. Coming to the center near the pathway, we have a marble pathway edged with a brick that needs a little bit of rejuvenation here. We have the bird bath. Underneath is all the periwinkle and ivy that we have to try and shape up again here soon. Leading up to the bench, we have the hyacinths that are all finished up blooming. We have some more hostas plugged in here to add more color during the purple season of hostas. And we have another Empress Wu plugged in there that just looks beautifully big. This is a columbine, which is another purple bloomer. I love my purple. So we have a purple blooming columbine right here, which just has a gorgeous flower. And what's nice about these is they spread. So we have a little baby here, a little baby here, and then even across the pathway, it had another baby on this side. So this one's even big enough to be blooming and looking gorgeous. I tried to edge the pathway with this vine, but this is a really unruly vine, so it takes a lot of pruning to keep it in check during the growing season. But I will come in here and pull it all out away from the bird bath so I can see the stone that I like there. And then this vine will be edged and edged all along the stone out here. I don't want that inside filling up the whole area. I like a little bit of uniformity to the chaos. I like seeing the stone here like this. In here we have some ice plant. This one is a different variety than the other one, but it has a little bit bigger leaf structure there, and it's spreading out nicely. Get this vine out of the way. There we go. And then we have a smaller one over here. Look how cute this one is in comparison. Little tiny one that actually put off a bloom already and has a couple more coming. And the volunteer maple. Got enough of those. The rest of the island I'm actually really proud of getting it all together, because it is a self-sustaining garden over here. So I don't have to water this garden at all out here unless I put some annuals in. These are all established perennials and they can handle themselves during the season. So this tongue going out of the island garden here is a little bit of a humped bank, and we can see it from the patio where we typically sit. So it has something from all the perennials that I have on the property, so it can be blooming one after another all season long. We're starting off the season with the purple globe alliums. It's just a beautiful purple, and the bumblebees love it. We have a few just dotted across the mound here. But the first thing to bloom on this bank was this purple iris. It's a short iris. It's staying pretty small and compact, but it put off a ton of bloom heads, and it just has a gorgeous purple and white color to it. And right behind that, we have a bunch more irises that are starting to bud up, looking plump. What's my cute puppy doing over here? Just laying in the garden. Good boy. Coming out the backside of the island garden, you're greeted with a massive purple iris, and I really want you to see this one whenever it opens up, because it is the darkest beautiful iris that I have, and it's almost black. It's so purple it's black. Whereas that one over here, you're gonna have to come back for the next garden tour to find out. On the back of the island, we have a Japanese maple right here. We have a viburnum that's putting on a nice amount of buds here, so that's gonna be good to see. That'll be the biggest show it's had. I think it only had about 2 blooms last year. There's a quickfire hydrangea there in the center, some more lilac right there for some purple. We have the Lenten roses right here as well, and some rhubarb, which I don't think this is the best place for a rhubarb. I don't think it gets enough sun where it is. I'm probably gonna have to move that. Right next to that is a row of daylilies that are gonna look really nice. I'm glad to see they popped up, because early on the deer ate them down to a nub, and they've had to regenerate a good bit. It comes to an end of a big yucca that's gonna be putting off a nice bloom, hopefully. These usually only bloom biannually, but I try and put multiple yuccas together so that I can get a bloom every single year. Right after that yucca, we have the bamboo marigold, or Mexican sunflower. I think it's a Tithonia, but I might be wrong on that. I'm thinking Tithonia grandiflora, but I'm not 100% sure. Behind that, we have the forsythia, which already put on its bloom, and behind that, we have the forsythia, which already put on its bloom. So we are already back to the giraffe, and we'll head off onto the food forest. So the main purpose for the food forest out here is to produce food with a bunch of berry bushes and fruit trees, but I also want to graduate it into some medicinal herbs as well. Quickly going through here, I have a nectarine tree on the corner that is doing really well. I usually have tomatoes going across this trellis here. I have 2 yews just as evergreens to help block the entrance here. I have a peach tree that's growing up here on the one entrance of the garden. You can come in this way, and right here is one of the strawberry beds that I mistakenly put under a massive shade tree, so they're not actually doing that well. They get some sunlight, and they actually are putting on some growth here this year. But much like this strawberry bed over here, it just doesn't get all the production that it should be because they don't get enough sun. So you can see I'm getting a bunch of blooms, but these strawberries could be doing a lot better in full sun. On this side here, I have a bunch of berries. We have black raspberries, we have raspberries, golden raspberries, we have a josta berry, blackberries, honeyberry, blueberry, gooseberry, and currants. I think I'm missing one. So it really does take a few years to get your fruits established, and I'm trying to get them in the ground so they can just start growing. I don't have the time to maintain them and get on them the way I want to yet, but I'm hoping that I can just leave them there growing, and whenever I can get to them, they're going to be a nice mature plant producing a good bit of berries. Between the blackberry and the blueberries, this is another entrance, which I have a small wisteria vine that is just starting out. I put it in last year, and it didn't really have much growth, as you can see. So it'll be nice to see how this will turn out. I have plans to make a trellis entrance right here, and actually shooting straight across to that pot. You see that right there is the exit, or a different entrance, whatever. But I want a tunnel trellis going through here, and that wisteria just might be climbing the whole thing. This is my favorite berry. This is the indigo haskap, or honeyberry, which is similar to a blueberry, but it has more of a sour taste. Not sure if I'm going to get any berries on this because of the late frost that we had. I tried to rinse it off and protect it, but I'm really not seeing anything growing on this. So that is unfortunate. Like I said, I know it's going to take a while to get the berries started, so I'm trying not to have too much stress about them not producing yet, and just let them grow and get established before I try and take a good harvest from them. There's plenty of space out here right now as I get these perennials started, so I still fill in the different areas with the annual veggies that I need a little bit of more space for. Over here we have currants that are in full bloom right now. A nice tight long yellow flower. So if you followed along, this area gets a lot of wood chips each year. This is my Back to Eden garden, and it gets a layer of wood chips every year, and these are already pretty thick. I put down 6 inches this year. This area right here is where I dumped the PAL, so it's probably even more than that. But you can see all the weeds still coming up through. A lot of the violas popping up through, and some of the other stuff as well, the pokeweed. So it's a little discouraging coming in here doing all the mulching and still getting all these weeds to come up through. Hey Pop, do you check on all the animals? Good boy. So I don't only do gardening here, I also have a bunch of animals up at the barn for my homestead channel. So check that out in the description below and subscribe to that one to see everything about the animals here. I'm really liking this flower pot that we just put out here in the last video. It has the passion vine in it that I'm not sure if it survived the winter yet or not, but I will put a different vine in there if that one ended up dying. It's simple, but I really like the way it's looking next to the entrance here. I might get something else to frame out the other side of the entrance, kind of give it some balance. The west side of the food forest, I usually plant my potatoes in here. I put a big layer of compost down and then I put my potatoes right in there. You can actually see, here's a potato coming back right now, a couple of the pieces that I forgot, and then some more volunteer sunflowers as well. Here's actually a good bit of potato in there. I thought I harvested everything. But I've decided this year to do my potatoes down in the vegetable garden and not out here, just to do a little bit of crop rotation and not grow my potatoes in the same spot 3 years in a row. I know this is a long tour, but I enjoy taking you along with the progression of the gardens here at Whitt Acres during the growing season. We just got through the island garden and the food forest garden, which are kind of located at the center of the property. They're actually both surrounded completely by grass. We're gonna head to the other side of the driveway and then work our way in to finish up at the pond. Towering over the pergola garden, we have a mature eastern hemlock looking gorgeous. At the base of that, we have a feather reed grass. Next to that, we have a dark tuxedo hydrangea. Then we have a quickfire hydrangea next to that gets a little bit bigger. And behind that, we have a viburnum. I can't remember right now what kind of viburnum this one is. It's not the blueberries viburnum. Arrowwood. This one is the Arrowwood viburnum, and it already finished up blooming as well. Down below I have a couple sticks in the ground that are marking where I plugged in some elephant ears that I overwintered. I'm hoping that the elephant ears are alive, but I've had some bad luck with those before, so I really wanted to get the elephant ears in the ground so they could start growing if they were alive. We put in the pathway last year and it worked really well throughout the winter. Here in the front of the pergola we have a few perennials that keep coming up. I did plug in an elephant ear right here. We have a blue star that's going to be blooming nicely right there. Behind that is a very fragrant pink Asiatic lily that I like using in arrangements. We have the first post here with a red trumpet vine. Behind that is my biggest peony on the property, and it is above waist high, and you can see the little ants already on it. Starting to work on that. In between the two posts I have a ornamental grass. I'm not sure the actual name on that, but I'm trying to get that to fill in this whole area to try and give it a little bit of privacy. And then I just plugged in this one. This is a sweet autumn clematis, and I just put that one in because we pulled out the passion vine and put it in a pot. I'm hoping that this one adds a nice later season interest, that the honeysuckle and the silver lace vine are already finished up and the trumpet vine finishes in the summer. The sweet autumn clematis will be coming in the fall with a nice fragrant white flower. It worked out really well down in the rose garden by the patio, but I was the only one that enjoyed it, so everybody else wanted it gone. So now we have it moved up here, and hopefully everybody likes it a little bit better on the pergola. Hey little bird, am I bothering you? We got the little birds living in the gourd birdhouse that I grew and made into a house, and it's working out beautifully on this one. I do have another one for that side. I have to actually get that one hung up. We have the silver lace vine that has never skipped a beat. It is already filling up the archway and it's already coming down the other side. It's way ahead of me because I'm still trying to get a post in there and get this all framed out. I have a whole pergola expansion plan going for another video. I just have to get everything ready for it first. Coming along this side, we have another one of those pink Asiatic lilies. Behind that, we have the biggest echinacea that I've ever seen. This thing gets massive. And then we have a couple hostas plugged in here, some elephant ears that I have buried, and one of the big thuja green giants. So hopefully this will get nice and big and start blocking the neighbor's area. So my property is pretty wide open. Anywhere you stand, you can pretty much see neighbor's property, which I'm trying to change with a lot of the plantings. I want to plant a lot of stuff so it kind of feels more of a discoverable garden where you can walk around and see something instead of seeing everything right from one spot. So I've been working on plugging in some evergreens. We have 3 thuja green giants back here that'll hopefully get nice and big and give a more cozy feel to the garden back here. Inside the pergola, I have some plans to hang some hammocks on either side of this swing, and then I have to add some square tubing. You can see that's right there for the hammock. I need to add some for the swing to add a little bit more support. Right now it's just clipped to the cattle panel on top of the pergola, and that's just not enough for anybody to use it. It's only really sitting there for decoration right now. The pergola itself gets filled up with my gourds. That's what it was made for, to grow all my birdhouse gourds and all the other gourds. You can see some of them just lying around on the ground right now, drying out. So with the gourds up there, it kind of gives a tropical feel, large leaves. So I try and mimic that throughout the rest of the garden with some elephant ears and some canna lilies usually, to try and make this a jungle garden or a tropical feeling garden. So I don't always succeed, but you got to have goals, right? Now we have a little bit of garden bordering the driveway as we head back to the patio. Out here I put it in a bird bath because it's a little bit further away from the pond, and we don't really have much water out here on this side of the property. So I wanted to add a little bit something for the birds. We have a orange rocket barberry right there on the corner getting some sun. We also have some stone crop and Shasta daisy plugged in here, as well as a Carl Forster grass right next to the trunk of the poplar tree that is the main specimen for this garden. We also have a daylily right there on the corner, some hosta in here for some color, and there is some other stuff plugged in, but I'm not sure if it survived the winter. I didn't get to this garden and get it mulched and composted. I want to put another layer of topsoil through here before I put any chips down it to mulch it, because I kind of filled this up with compost and topsoil. This bed around the base of the poplar is a relatively new garden bed. I filled it up, I elevated the soil level so I could get the plants planted in there, because the poplar just had a bunch of surface roots that I couldn't mow around. So what I did was fill up the soil level about 10 inches so I could actually put some plants in there. And since then it's depleted a little bit and settled. So I want to get another layer of topsoil in there before I come in with any mulch this year. That way I can get all that fabric pulled off and it'll look a lot nicer this year. We have the marble pathways that enter the driveway from the yard. And then we have hosta, daylily alternating down the driveway here. Right in the middle we have a new addition, which is a yellow maple tree. So this is a yellow Norway maple, and this is going to be a nice addition because we have the red maple there, which is a dark burgundy, bright yellow, and then the poplar's green. I think it just adds a nice color visual coming in the driveway. At the end of the alternating hostas and daylilies, we have another stone crop for the fall interest. Oh. So we have the red maple tree here with some seeding under it and the feeder for the wild birds. We have another marble pathway entering the driveway, and then the blue fescues here. We have a daffodil bunch right there that's all finished up, but the blue fescue had dianthus, pink dianthus between each set, but it really got taken over by the weeds, and the dogs come over to this area and kind of do a little bit of damage on them. I've had to replace some blue fescue already because of the dogs peeing on them. But if you look in here, we have some weeds just taking over the dianthus, and I might need to find something to replace the dianthus that'll work a little bit better with all this blue fescue and maybe be a little bit more durable for the dog traffic. We finish it off with another daffodil, another variegated hosta here, but you can see how it has that ground cover plant that came with it. This is one of the free hostas that is just shooting off a bunch of this ground cover plant, which looks like it's actually trying to bud right now. So if you know what this is, let me know down below. Right beside that, to finish it off, is a Shasta daisy, which is also getting taken over by that same ground cover. So we made it around all the gardens here around the perimeter of the property. Now we worked our way into the center, or the heart of the property, where we spend most of our time on the patio by the pond. Next to the patio pond fountain that we just did on the aquatics channel is the rose garden, which I'm only going to show you this much of it because it is that bad. I really need to step up my rose garden. Recently, we just finished up this bed here and got it ready to be planted out. We put in a new edging of the stone. We pulled out all the volunteer hostas that we didn't want in there, and then we rearranged the irises so that we have all the same color irises in here now. It's a nice full setup here. The irises are along the back edge there. We have a hosta back there and up here, and then a daylily right there. That's my typical perennial setup, and I pretty much use it everywhere, so I have nice consistency around the property. This corner hosta here is a little special because it actually has spiderwort mixed in with it. It's been doing really well together. They seem to not affect each other in a negative way, but the spiderwort blooms and then the hosta blooms, and it's a gorgeous little display here. But ever since we finished that video, I have just looked at this and just loved how that stone edging turned out. And all this empty space in the front I fill up with bright colorful annuals during the season, which the season is kind of right now, and I'm just not ready for it yet. Right next to the pond I have my cold frame, which is just lusciously full of lettuces and radishes and some onions. There's even a pea growing up in there. So I just rip off some of this and give it to the chickens. We're not actually eating any of this ourselves right now. They really just grew it to have some early harvest for the chickens. I have 53 chickens right now up here on the patio in the brooders, and I'm going to be moving them up into the barn here soon. So if you want to see the homestead channel, make sure you check that out down below. Now we're finally at the pond, and before I show it to you, I want you to know that I have not been able to finish the pond yet. So it's not running at full capacity, and it's a little bit dirty. It's a lot dirty. So this is the pond, and we are not done with it yet. If you want to see the full build from start to finish of the pond here so far, you can go to the aquatics channel and check that out. There's not too much going on the pond bank yet. We do have some perennials that are popping up, and the tulips are just starting to finish. The shining star this time of year is the purple lupin here. I don't know how many plants are in this grouping. It came up from sowing direct seed, and I left it there, and it's been doing really well ever since. Throughout the season here, we'll get over 40 of these beautiful colas. They make great cut flowers as well, and they have different shades of purple as they go, some darker purple, and they even go to a light blue during the later part of the season. Just love this plant. Around the waterfall here, I've been working on getting this creeping Jenny to establish around the edges and fill in a lot of the rock spaces, and I really like the way it's been turning out. I have a little bit on the other side that I actually started spreading out already this year. Once it starts growing out, I just cut off a chunk and replant it and replant it and replant it, so it fills up all the edging, and it'll actually fill in to be a nice edge around the rocks here. This is the massive red gladiola that puts on a beautiful show in the middle of summer each year, and of course had to plug in a little hosta. So once I get this whole area weeded out here, it'll be filled up with a bunch of colorful annuals. We do have a buddleia back here that is for strictly the bringing the butterflies. We have some Asiatic lilies in the back there that kind of stayed after getting dug up, and we didn't get all of them. There's another one right there. And then right on the edge, we have another hosta. Funny thing about this hosta, we actually dug the whole pond around it. I dug right up next to it. We ended up covering it with the liner. And then the spring came, and whenever I was moving the liner working on the pond last year, I found the hosta underneath bleached white. So I uncovered it, it greened up nicely, and it's been doing good ever since. But over winter, without the pump running on the pond, we developed a lot of algae, and it's gonna need a nice spring clean out. All right, I think that is going to be all for the garden tour right now. I think I showed you everything I need to show you. There's a lot more going on here on the property, but I think I showed you what you need to see, so you'll be able to follow along with the progressions of the gardens this year. If you want to see some more from Whitt Acres, make sure to subscribe down below, hit the bell notification, hit that like button before you leave, and you can see me and Echo on the next one. Thanks for watching.